My love, we shouldn't be doing this here. What if someone comes?
Shh, don't think about it for just one moment. Forget the crown, forget the laws. Just think about us.
The elders say that the sky is wide enough for every bird to fly. But when two birds tie their wings together in the air, they must prepare for a hard and painful fall. You cannot take the holy oil of the ancestors and use it to fry the meat of your own dirty desires. Look at the shadows on the palace floors. Listen to the silence, it is louder than 1,000 drums. This was a time of gold chairs and empty hearts. It was a time when the throne was used as a bed for a sin so bad that even the ground refuses to name it. This is the story of Prince Dave and Princess Olivia. Before we reveal what happens next, a warm welcome to African Cinematic Tales. We are so happy to have you in our storytelling circle today. If you are enjoying this tale, please like this video and share it. And quickly, tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? Don't forget to subscribe, because every week, we bring you the untold stories of our ancestors that still speak to us today, no matter where we live. Now, let the story begin. In a land where the rivers flow with wisdom, there lived a prince and a princess that everyone admired. Prince Dave was strong and handsome in his silk robes, and Princess Olivia was as beautiful as a glass rose. To the people of the city, they were perfect. But inside their hearts, a poisonous weed was growing. They had a bond that crossed the forbidden line. Their love had turned the palace into a secret cage. The sun did not just rise over the kingdom, it bowed to the golden roofs of the palace. Every morning, the drums woke up the royal house. The smell of rich spices from the kitchens filled the city. But inside his room, Prince Dave felt no joy. He stood on his balcony in his heavy golden cloth, looking down at the people who loved him. He was a man who had everything, but his soul was starving. He was thirsty for the one thing that would drown his honor. He watched the city girls carrying water and laughing. He was jealous of them. Even though they were poor, their hearts were clean. His heart was a dark room where a secret was hidden behind a curtain of gold. Then there was Princess Olivia. She moved through the halls like a spirit of the moon. Her skin was smooth, and her crown looked like it was part of her own body. She was the pride of the Queen Mother. The elders called her the light of the kingdom. But when the sun went down and the palace lamps were lit, that light became a dangerous fire. She would pass her brother in the hallway, and though they said nothing in front of the guards, their eyes spoke a secret language. It was a language of fire and thunder. It was a language that promised a disaster that no prayer could stop. The evening was still, like the quiet before a big storm. The palace was settling down for the night. The guards stood like statues at the main gates. But in a hidden room, far away from the eyes of the court, the air was heavy. The walls were covered with expensive cloths showing the victories of old kings. But tonight, the only victory in this room was the victory of sin over a clean mind. Prince Dave stood by the table, his hands shaking as he poured wine he could not drink. He heard the soft sound of the door opening, a tiny noise, but it felt like a mountain falling in his mind. Olivia was there. She had taken off her royal shawl. She stood there in a white gown that glowed in the light of the oil lamps. They stood for a long time, just breathing the same air. The silence was screaming. It was the silence of two people standing on the edge of a cliff, getting ready to jump. The wine was forgotten. The prince reached out and touched his sister's face. It was a touch that was both a blessing and a curse. When they finally held each other, it felt like the very floor of the palace groaned in shame. It was a kiss that tasted like stolen honey, sweet in the mouth, but bitter in the stomach. They did not hear the wind outside. They did not hear the ancestors crying in the shadows. They only heard their own hearts, beating like two drums playing a song of destruction. The elders say that if you try to hide behind your finger, you should remember that the sun can still see your whole body. Just as the prince and the princess were lost in their own world, the real world came crashing down. The heavy wood door suddenly moved on its hinges. It was not a soft knock, it was a loud announcement. The door swung wide. Standing there in the light of the hallway was Queen Akudo. She was a woman as strong as a mountain, carrying the weight of her ancestors. She did not move. She did not shout. She simply stood there, her eyes looking across the room like a small fire on dry grass. The air in the room died. Dave and Olivia jumped apart as if they had been struck by lightning. The prince's hands, which were steady just a moment ago, began to shake. He fumbled with the gold patterns on his shirt, his fingers trembling so hard he could barely feel the cloth. Olivia turned her back to the door for a second. She tried to put on her princess face again, but her heart was beating like a trapped bird against her ribs. The queen stepped into the room. The steady, heavy sound of her royal staff hit the floor with every step. It was a sound that reminded everyone of her power. She walked in, the hallway light catching the gold in her head wrap. She looked like a proud mother of a great kingdom. In a voice that was high and shaky, Olivia struggled to catch her breath. She cried out to her mother, surprised that she had returned so early. Dave stepped forward, forcing a smile that did not reach his eyes. He told the queen that he and Olivia were just putting things in order, that they were only discussing the plans for the royal gardens because Olivia wanted the stones for the fountain to be perfect. Queen Akudo laughed softly, her eyes bright with pride. She questioned them, asking if it was truly the royal gardens they discussed. She told them she had thought they were in there talking about the future of the kingdom. She said it made her heart happy to see them working so closely together, and that it was rare to see a brother and sister so dedicated to their home. The Queen Mother's look was full of warmth, and it made Dave's stomach turn with guilt. She reached out and fixed the silk on Olivia's shoulder with a loving hand. She talked about the morning meeting and the bright future waiting for them both. She saw only two hard-working children. She never imagined the darkness that was standing between them just seconds before. With a final, loving nod, she turned and walked out of the room gracefully, her mind already on the big dinner. After she left, Olivia sank against the heavy table, her hand on her throat. She whispered in a weak voice, full of fear, that her mother had not seen. Dave could only stare at the closed door, his body cold with sweat. He knew they were safe for now, but their mother's trust felt heavier than any punishment. The next day, the sun rose with a heat that felt like a judgment. The city was busy, but a few miles away, on the expensive streets where the rich and the powerful spend their time, a different kind of fire was starting. Natasha was not just any girl. She was a top-class lady of the city, a woman of high fashion who turned heads wherever she went. She did not live in the palace, but she moved through the city's elite circles with grace. Today, she walked with a secret fire in her eyes. She dressed in white, the color of purity, but her heart was ready for war. She was dating Prince Dave, and she had begun to sense the darkness hiding in the palace. She felt that the man she loved was being pulled away by a force she couldn't yet name. It was late afternoon when the road became a stage for a royal showdown. The sound of powerful engines tore through the air. Two expensive cars, black and shining like the skin of a panther, sped toward each other from opposite ends of the road. It was a dance of power and ego. At the very last second, the tires screamed against the ground as both cars braked, stopping face to face in a cloud of dust and tension. The doors opened. Natasha stepped out first. She did not wait for a servant to help her. She stood in the middle of the road, her movements full of a confidence that made the ground tremble. She was a big girl in this city, and she was not afraid of anyone. From the other car, Olivia's bodyguard rushed forward. He did not just open the door, he unrolled a bright red carpet onto the street. He wanted everyone to know that a princess was stepping onto the earth. Olivia stepped out. Her crown caught the light of the setting sun, and she held her head so high she looked like she was breathing a different air than the rest of humanity. She walked down that red carpet, the steady, sharp sound of her footsteps echoing like a challenge until she stood inches from Natasha. The two women stood there, one a princess by blood, the other a top-class beauty who held the prince's heart. The air between them was so hot it could have started a fire. The big road was quiet. You could only hear the hot car engines and the wind. On one side stood the princess. She believed she was better than everyone. On the other side stood Natasha. She was ready to fight. They stood very close to each other. Natasha spoke first. Her voice was strong. She looked at Olivia, at her expensive lace, her crown, and the red carpet, and she felt very angry. She asked the princess why she had been looking for her all over the city. Olivia's voice was cold and proud. She told Natasha that she had a message. Natasha must stay away from the palace and, most importantly, stay away from Prince Dave. When she heard Dave's name, Natasha got even angrier. She stepped very close to the princess, until their faces were almost touching. Natasha told her to be quiet and feel ashamed. She told Olivia that she knew her secret, that the princess was having a secret love affair with her own brother. Natasha warned her to back off because David belonged to her. She said that if the princess didn't stop, she would tell the whole world the truth about what the gorgeous Princess Olivia was doing with her brother. For a moment, the princess looked shocked. But then, her face changed. She wasn't afraid anymore. She leaned into Natasha's ear and spoke in a very low, scary whisper. The princess talked about Natasha's past in a land across the sea. She spoke about a shameful life that Natasha tried to hide from everyone. She whispered about the repairs Natasha had to do to her body and the secrets she used to hide her past. She reminded her of how she was forced to leave that country and come back home in shame. Olivia gave her a final warning. Natasha had only 24 hours to leave Dave's life forever. If she didn't, Olivia promised to release the old videos of Natasha's shame. She said the videos would spread all over the internet like a wildfire, and Natasha would be ruined forever. Olivia turned her back and walked elegantly to her car. Her driver opened the door, and the car sped away. The silence that followed was heavy. Natasha stood in the middle of the road, her hands shaking. "Oh my God," she whispered to the wind, "I am finished. I am totally ruined." She felt the walls of her life closing in. How did the princess know? Who had sold her secret to the palace? She rushed back to her own car, her movements frantic, and her driver sped away as if they were being chased by ghosts. While Natasha was drowning in her secrets, the palace was becoming a house of mourning. Prince Dave arrived at Natasha's private apartment that night, his heart pacing like a trapped bird. He burst through the door, expecting to find the woman he loved waiting for him with a smile. Instead, he found a disaster. The room was a mess of clothes and suitcases. Natasha was throwing her life into boxes, her eyes red and swollen from crying. Dave tried to hold her and ask for the truth, but Natasha was moving in a blind panic, like someone trying to escape a burning house. She screamed at him to go back to the devil he called a sister. Dave stood in the center of the mess, his chest heavy with heartbreak and a rising, dark anger. He watched the woman he had promised to protect walk out of the door with a heavy suitcase, her footsteps sounding down the hallway like a funeral drum. He was left alone in the empty room, looking at the discarded memories of their love. He slammed his fist against the door, the pain in his hand nothing compared to the fire in his soul. He knew then that his own sister, Olivia, was the one who had destroyed everything. The elders say that when a man's house is burning, he does not waste time chasing rats, he goes straight to the fire. Prince Dave left Natasha's empty apartment with a heart that felt like hot coal. As he drove back to the palace from Natasha's place, his mind was in a dark place. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Natasha's crying face. Every time he opened them, he saw the gold walls of the palace that had now become his prison. The night was hot and heavy, but inside Princess Olivia's private room, it was cold. Olivia sat before her mirror, calmly putting on her makeup. She looked at herself and saw a winner. But her peace was broken when the heavy doors flew open with a loud crash. Dave burst in. He was no longer a polished prince, he was a man full of anger. His eyes were red, and his chest was moving up and down with a fury that had no end. He shouted at Olivia, demanding to know what she had done to Natasha. Olivia did not even turn around. In a cold voice, she told him that a prince should have better manners when entering a lady's room. But Dave was done playing royal games. He slammed his hand on her marble table and shouted again, demanding the truth because Natasha was out of her mind with fear. Olivia slowly put down her brush and turned to face him. She did not look like a sister, she looked like a hunter. She spoke about royal standards and what the queen expected, but her words were like honey poured over a sharp razor. She told him clearly that she wanted him to be hers, just like he had always been. But for the first time, the prince saw the chains holding him. He looked at the woman he had been with, and he finally saw the sickness of their love. He realized they were not just lovers, they were monsters. He backed away, his voice shaking. He told her that it was over. He told her he was going to their mother, the queen, to tell her everything and end this nightmare forever. Olivia lost her control. She screamed at him, her face full of fear and rage. She told him that he wouldn't dare destroy them. She warned him to stay away from their mother, screaming that he should not try such a thing with her. Dave did not listen to his sister. He turned around and walked out of the room, slamming the door so hard it sounded like a gunshot through the silent palace. He walked toward the queen's living room, his boots making heavy sounds on the stone floor. He felt the weight of his crown, but he did not care anymore. He just wanted to be honest and breathe again. Inside the room, the Queen Mother was sitting on her sofa. She looked peaceful in the soft light, sipping her juice and thinking about her younger days. But when Dave burst in, looking pale and shaking, she felt a cold fear in her heart. Dave fell to his knees before his mother. With tears in his voice, he told her that he had been living a lie in the palace and it was destroying him. He started to tell her about the secret he and Olivia had been keeping for a long time. He was ready to confess everything. The secret was right on the tip of his tongue. But as the elders say, the bird that is about to sing its final song must watch the hawk in the sky. Just as Dave opened his mouth to tell the truth, the doors swung open again. Olivia walked in, looking like a perfect, caring sister. She did not look like the woman who was just screaming, she looked like a saint. She moved quickly, standing between her brother and their mother. She touched Dave's forehead with her cold fingers. She changed his sin into a sickness. She told the queen that Dave was suffering from terrible headaches and that the light was hurting his eyes. She claimed he was only keeping secrets because he did not want his mother to worry about his health. The Queen Mother felt a great relief. She laughed with joy because she thought it was just a simple headache. She called Dave a foolish boy for hiding such a small thing. She did not see the terror in his eyes, and she did not see how tightly Olivia was gripping his arm. As Olivia led the broken prince toward the door, Dave looked back at his mother one last time. He saw her smiling, thinking her children were safe. He realized then that Olivia had not just saved them from trouble, she had buried him alive in a grave of lies. The elders say that you can run from the sound of a drum, but you cannot run from the heartbeat inside your own chest. As the heavy doors of the queen's room closed behind them, the silence in the palace hallway was very heavy. Prince Dave felt like his throat was filled with dry sand. He had been so close to telling the truth, but his sister had dragged him back into the dark. Olivia did not let go of his arm. Her grip was like iron, and her nails dug into his silk sleeve as she dragged him away from their mother's door. When they reached the shadows of the long hallway, where the old royal pictures seemed to look at them with disgust, Dave finally snapped. He pulled his arm back with force, almost knocking Olivia against the cold stone wall. He stood there, breathing hard, his face covered in sweat and pain. He told her to get her hands off him, angry that she had lied to their mother when he was so close to ending the nightmare. But Olivia's eyes flashed like a hunter in the dark. She told him to keep his voice down. She warned him that he wasn't ending a nightmare, but was instead signing their death warrants. She asked him if he had any idea what the queen would do to them if he had finished his confession. Dave tried to push past her to go back to the queen's door. He said he would rather be a prisoner in a dungeon than be a prisoner in Olivia's bed. But the elders say that a woman who has already lost her honor has nothing left to lose but her life. Olivia blocked his path and used the name of the woman he loved as a weapon. She threatened that if he went back inside, she would make sure Natasha never saw the light of day again. She said she would tell the queen that Dave had gone mad because of a common girl. The prince stopped. The fire in his eyes died, and he felt a cold, empty sadness. He realized that Olivia was not just his sister, she was his jailer. He followed her into a hidden room deep in the palace, his feet feeling heavy like a man walking to his own death. The room was small and dark, a place where the sun never reached. The door slammed shut and the lock clicked, a sound that felt like a final judgment. Inside the dim light, Olivia changed again. She no longer looked like a hunter, she looked like a woman full of sorrow. She spoke with a poisonous sweetness, pretending to be sorry. She told him that she knew their relationship was wrong and that it had to stop. But she begged him for one more time. She asked him to make their love strong for the very last time, promising that after this, it would truly be over. The prince's strength melted away like wax in a fire. In that dark room, they gave into the darkness one last time. As they did, his white royal clothes and the golden crown itself were cast aside, rolling into the dust of the corner. They thought they were saying goodbye to their sin, but they were actually planting the seeds of their final destruction. Days passed like a slow fever. The sun rose and set, but the palace felt like it was underwater. Then came the morning that changed everything. Natasha, the girl they thought they had chased away forever, returned to the palace. She did not come with a loud voice or a royal car. She came through the side entrance, with a cloth covering her head like a simple woman from the poor side of the city. She held a small box with the things Dave had left at her apartment. She looked quiet and broken. But beneath that cloth, her eyes were as sharp as a needle. Princess Olivia walked out to meet her, holding her head high. She was full of pride, thinking she had already won. She told Natasha to drop the box and get out of her sight. But just as Olivia opened her mouth to insult her again, a sudden sickness hit her. Olivia's face changed from healthy bronze to the color of a dying leaf. She clapped her hand over her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. Her royal body failed her right in front of the woman she hated. She turned and ran toward her private rooms to throw up the secret she could no longer hide. Natasha stood alone in the hallway. She did not move or cry. She slowly removed the cloth from her head and stood tall, a scary smile appearing on her face. She watched the doorway where the princess had disappeared. In that moment, she didn't need a doctor or a witness to tell her the truth. She knew exactly what was happening. Natasha realized that the princess was pregnant. She whispered to herself that Olivia thought she could bury her, but now, she would be the one to bury the princess. She adjusted her shawl with power and walked away from the palace. She was no longer the victim, she was now the hunter. The power of the royal family was finally starting to break. The elders say that when the moon is full, the shadows of the guilty grow long enough to touch the feet of their enemies. Princess Olivia sat in her room, surrounded by the smell of perfume and fear. She tried to wash the taste of the morning sickness from her mouth, but she could not wash the fear from her heart. She was a princess carrying a secret that was growing larger every day. Then, a message arrived, a small note with no name on it. The words were simple, but they felt like a death sentence. The note said, "I know what is growing inside you. Meet me at the back gardens tonight if you want the queen to keep her heart." The back gardens of the palace were made of cold stone and old washing basins. Under the dark sky, the evening air was biting and cold. Olivia arrived wrapped in a dark cloak, the sound of her heels clicking against the hard dirt like a drum beating for a funeral. She found Natasha standing by a stone basin, calmly scrubbing clothes under the ghostly light of the moon. Olivia's voice was sharp, trying to hide how much she was shaking. She insulted Natasha for calling a princess to such a dirty place. But Natasha did not even look up. In a steady, low voice, she told the princess that the dirt does not care about royalty, and neither does the truth. She looked Olivia in the eye and asked if she was ready to admit what was growing inside her. Natasha stood tall, her presence filling the air. She walked toward Olivia, her eyes fixed on the princess's stomach. She forced Olivia back, step by step, until the royal daughter was pinned against a large, ancient tree. Natasha leaned in close, her breath hot against Olivia's cold face. She reminded Olivia how she had called her a stain and thought her royal blood made her holy. But now, the princess was the one trembling. Natasha revealed that she saw Olivia running to throw up in the shadows. She mocked the princess, telling her that the child in her womb was not a prince, but a sin, a baby for her own brother. Olivia gasped, her eyes wide with terror. Natasha didn't stop there. She pointed out that while she was carrying Dave's real heir, Olivia was carrying a monster. She asked the Highness, who was truly stained now. Olivia was frozen, her mouth open but no words coming out. She looked like a bird caught in a trap. Natasha pulled back with a chilling smile. She told the princess to go back to her palace and start praying, because she was coming for everything the family owned. Natasha adjusted her shawl and walked away into the moonlight with the confidence of a woman who had already won the war. The next morning, the sun was bright, but the palace felt dark. The Queen Mother sat at a beautiful breakfast table filled with fruit and crystal glasses. Opposite her sat Dave and Olivia. They looked like ghosts. Their eyes were empty, and they picked at their food as if it were made of ash. Suddenly, the sound of elegant footsteps echoed on the floor. Natasha entered. She did not come as a servant, she came as a guest, wearing a beautiful dress that made her look like royalty. The Queen's face lit up with a smile, calling Natasha her beautiful daughter-in-law. The Queen invited her to sit, saying they were just discussing the future of the family. Natasha sat down slowly, her eyes locked on Olivia. She told the Queen she felt a pull to the palace that morning because there was something important that needed to be shared. The breakfast was a scene of pure torture. Natasha played with her silver spoon, letting it clink loudly. Every time the queen spoke of grandchildren or wedding plans, Dave almost choked on his water, and Olivia's hands turned white from gripping her napkin. Natasha was like a cat playing with two mice. She whispered about secrets and unburdening the heart, watching as the prince and princess drowned in their own sweat. The queen mother was no fool. She noticed how Olivia jumped when Natasha moved near her. She saw that Dave could not look at his bride-to-be. When the queen stood up to leave, the fake smiles vanished. The three young people sat in a silence so heavy it felt like the roof was about to collapse. The elders say that a lie is like a beautiful garment, it looks good when you put it on, but the moment the rain of truth falls, the fabric shrinks and begins to strangle you. After the poisoned breakfast, the palace felt like it was holding its breath. Prince Dave hid in the shadows of the garden, but Princess Olivia was called to the one place she feared most, the Queen Mother's private rooms. The room smelled of heavy herbs and royal history. Queen Akudo sat in her large chair, her back as straight as a spear. She was no longer the smiling mother, she was the queen, and her eyes burned like lamps. Olivia stood before her, trying to look royal, but her hands were shaking. As she tried to pour tea for her mother, the silver pot rattled loudly against the cup. The queen told her to stop, noticing that her hands had been trembling since sunrise. She demanded to know why her daughter and son could no longer look each other in the eye. Olivia forced a hollow laugh, claiming she was just tired from wedding plans. But a mother's spirit cannot be deceived. The queen mother stood up, her presence filling the room. She spoke of a dream she had, a dream of lions eating rotten meat and a throne covered in dust. As she walked toward Olivia, the strong smell of the herbs hit the princess's stomach like a blow. Olivia turned away, clutching her mouth as she became violently sick. The room went silent. In that moment, the crown did not matter, only the truth remained. The queen grabbed Olivia's wrist with a grip of iron and screamed, demanding to know who the father was. She threatened to cast Olivia out of the palace that very night if she did not name the men. Broken and sobbing, Olivia told a desperate lie. She claimed the father was a messenger from a northern city who had taken advantage of her in the gardens while the queen was away. The queen mother froze, filled with rage and pity. She ordered Olivia to be locked in her room, declaring that no one would speak to her until this messenger was found. But as the queen left, she remembered the way Natasha had looked at Olivia. She wondered why a common girl knew more about the princess's sickness than she did. That night, the palace felt like a graveyard. Olivia was a prisoner in her own room. When Dave managed to slip past the guards to see her, he was horrified. He asked her what she had done, warning her that the queen would search every city for this fake messenger. He feared what would happen when Natasha heard this new lie. But Olivia's spirit had turned cold and sharp again. She whispered that they had to make sure Natasha never spoke. She warned Dave that if Natasha opened her mouth, they would not just be kicked out, they would be erased. Dave looked at his sister and felt a chilling fear. He realized she was willing to burn the entire kingdom to keep their secret. He suggested giving Natasha gold or land, anything to keep their hands clean of blood. But Olivia only laughed. She knew that Natasha didn't want gold, Natasha wanted the throne. As a storm began to brew outside, Dave realized he was trapped between two women who were both ready to destroy him. He walked out with a heavy heart, not knowing that at that very moment, the Queen Mother was standing on a balcony with Natasha, listening to a truth that would turn the palace to ashes. The elders say that the truth is like a seed buried under a mountain of rocks. It may take 100 years, but eventually, it will push through the stone to find the sun. While Princess Olivia sat locked in her room, weaving more lies about a stranger from the north, the Queen Mother was looking for a different kind of light. She stood on the high balcony in the silver moonlight, her heart feeling like a glass that had been cracked by a heavy blow. The air was still, and the smell of a coming storm was thick. Natasha walked onto the balcony with slow, firm steps. She did not bow like a servant, she walked like a woman who held the keys to the kingdom. The Queen Mother looked out at the lights of the city, wondering how her people could sleep in peace while her own house was rotting from the inside. With a trembling and tired voice, the Queen asked Natasha to sit. She told her that Olivia claimed a stranger had defiled her, but she remembered Natasha's face at breakfast. She knew Natasha wasn't surprised, she was disgusted. The Queen begged her to tell the truth about who really put the child in Olivia's womb. Natasha's voice was steady like a deep river. She told the queen that the truth is a heavy burden and that when a house is built on a rotten foundation, it is better to let it fall than to patch the cracks with lies. Natasha was wise and did not give a name right away. Instead, she told the queen mother to look where she was afraid to look, at the son she had raised with so much pride. She told the queen to ask Dave why he could not sleep and why his eyes were full of a fear that had no name. The queen mother staggered, holding onto a stone pillar to keep from falling. The realization was like a poison entering her soul. The scene shifted to Dave's private study. The room was dark, lit only by a single candle. Dave sat at his desk, staring at the golden scepter, the symbol of power he no longer deserved. Suddenly, the door was slammed open with a sound like thunder. The queen mother stood there, looking like a spirit of judgment. Her eyes were wide with grief and madness. She walked toward Dave, her voice a dangerous growl. She told him she had spoken to Natasha and demanded to know why he could not look her in the eye. Dave backed away until he hit the wall, trying to claim that Natasha was just a bitter girl causing trouble. But the queen mother screamed with a voice that shook the palace. She demanded the truth, asking if the shame was so great that it belonged to her own blood. The weight was too much. The prince, the golden son, collapsed to his knees at his mother's feet. He did not hide anymore. He buried his face in her royal robes and sobbed, his body shaking with pain. He spoke the words that could never be taken back. He told her about the final time, about trying to be clean, and about the darkness that was stronger than their blood. The queen mother froze. She let go of his collar as if she had touched something diseased. She staggered back, her face full of horror and disgust. She looked at the son she had loved and saw only a monster. In a dead, hollow voice, she told him that he and his sister had turned her palace into a house of filth. She told him there was no forgiveness and that even the ground beneath them would not accept their footsteps. She turned away, leaving Dave broken on the floor. She saw Natasha standing in the shadows of the hallway, watching silently. The queen mother did not say, "Thank you" or "Sorry." She only whispered that Natasha was right, the house must fall. At that moment, the storm finally broke. The rain began to beat against the palace windows, washing away the last remains of the royal honor. The elders of the old forest say that the night may be long and full of shadows, but the sun never forgets its way to the horizon. However, for the House of Akudo, the sun did not bring warmth, it brought a cold light that revealed every crack in the palace walls. The storm had passed, leaving the gardens dripping with water that looked like the tears of the ancestors. The main throne room was a hall of echoes. Usually, this place was filled with music and the sound of gold, but this morning, there was only a heavy silence. Prince Dave and Princess Olivia were no longer the proud royals they once were. They had been stripped of their jewelry, their golden bracelets, emerald necklaces, and shimmering crowns had been taken away. They wore only plain, dark clothes of the poorest workers. Their hair was messy, and their eyes were red from a night of weeping. They stood small and broken, looking at the throne they had shamed. Queen Akudo sat on the throne, looking like she had aged 10 years in a single night. Her face was full of deep lines of grief. To her side stood Natasha. She was the only one who glowed. She stood calm and royal, wearing a clean, beautiful wrap that signaled a new beginning. The queen's voice echoed through the hall, cold and final. She told them that the palace had always protected the family bloodline, but Dave and Olivia had turned that blood into poison. She told them that though they thought their secrets were buried, the earth had spat them out because it could not stomach the taste of their sin. Olivia fell to her knees, sobbing and begging her mother for mercy, reminding her that they were her own flesh and blood. But the queen stood up, her voice rising like a mountain wind. She told them they stopped being her children the moment they chose their lust over their honor. She said they had brought a curse upon the house that only the truth could wash away. The queen mother called Natasha forward. Natasha walked across the stone floor with her head held high, looking at the siblings she had defeated. The mother reached for her own neck and took off a golden pendant, the ancient symbol of the royal heir. She turned back to Dave and Olivia and delivered her final judgment. She stripped them of their titles and ordered them to leave the palace at sunrise. She told them they would walk into the city as commoners and that the name of the royal family must never cross their lips again. She commanded them to work the soil with their hands until they learned the meaning of hard work. Then, she placed the golden pendant around Natasha's neck. The metal caught the morning light, shining brightly. The mother declared that the child Natasha carried was clean, a child born of a true heart. She announced that Natasha would remain at her side, and the throne would one day pass to the child of the woman who had saved the kingdom from its own rot. The guards stepped forward. They did not bow. They placed their hands on the shoulders of the former prince and princess and led them toward the heavy doors. Dave looked at Natasha one last time with a look of deep longing, but Natasha only looked back with cold pity, as if looking at a fallen tree blocking her path. The massive palace doors groaned open and then slammed shut with a sound that signaled the end of an era. Outside, Dave and Olivia stood in the red dirt of the road, barefoot and broken. They looked back at the high balcony, where Natasha and the Queen Mother stood side by side. Natasha placed her hand on her stomach, her shape sharp against the rising sun. She had the crown. She had the future. She had the truth. The elders say that the sun may set on a secret, but it always rises on the truth. But listen closely, for there is a deeper wisdom carved into the stones of our land. You see, a crown can hide a man's hair, but it can never hide his thoughts from the gods. We have seen that the royal oil of the ancestors is not meant to fry the meat of forbidden desires. When you take what is holy and treat it like a common rag, you are not just staining your clothes, you are poisoning the very well that your children must drink from. They say that a person who builds a house with the wood of deception must not be surprised when the roof collapses during the first storm of the truth. Dave and Olivia thought they could live in the shadows and rule in the light, but the light is a jealous master. You cannot serve two kings, you cannot serve your lust and your honor at the same table. Eventually, one will eat the other, and you will be left with an empty plate and a hollow soul. And what of Natasha? Let this be a warning to those who sit on high chairs: never look down on the person who sweeps your floor or carries your water. For the person you call a stain may be the only one carrying the soap that can clean your house. Wealth is a coat that we put on in the morning and take off at night, but character is the skin that stays with us until we return to the dust. So, as you walk away from the palace of shadows, ask yourself, what are you building with? Is your foundation made of the solid rock of integrity, or the shifting sands of a secret? Remember, the ancestors do not count the gold in your treasury, they count the scars of truth on your heart. Treat the humble with respect, keep your hands clean of forbidden fruit, and always remember, no matter how fast a lie runs, the truth only needs one step to overtake it. The broken scepter of the House of Akudo has fallen to the dust, but the earth remains. We have seen that a crown can hide a man's hair, but it can never hide his heart from the eyes of the ancestors. May your own path be lit by the fire of honor, and may your house be built on the rock of truth, not the shifting sands of a secret. Thank you for witnessing the fall and the rise of the royal house. If this story has shown you that honor is greater than gold, show your support by liking this video. Comment, "The truth is final," below to show you stand with the light. Subscribe to African Cinematic Tales to join us for the next journey into the wisdom of our ancestors. Stay blessed, stay honorable, and we will see you in the next episode.